Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly attract success, love, and abundance into their lives? The secret lies not in what they do, but in who they know themselves to be. Today, I'm going to share with you the profound truth about your inherent worth and how to embody it fully. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and truly saw your magnificence? Not your physical appearance, but the radiant being of infinite potential that you truly are. In our research laboratories, we've discovered something remarkable about human potential. When people begin to act from a place of complete self-acceptance, their brain chemistry literally transforms. They activate neural pathways associated with confidence, creativity, and unlimited possibility. Think about this. Every morning when you wake up, you have a choice. You can either step into the day carrying old beliefs about not being enough, or you can choose to embody your inherent completeness. This choice literally shapes the neural networks in your brain. Our study shows something fascinating about self-worth. When people learn to generate a state of being enough from within, rather than seeking validation from outside, they create what we call coherence fields that influence everything around them. Consider how a flower doesn't question its right to bloom. It simply expresses its full nature without hesitation. You have the same natural right to express your full potential. In our advanced brain imaging studies, we've observed that people who live from a state of being enough have distinctive neural patterns. They've literally rewired their brains to support their empowered state of being. Think about how the ocean doesn't need permission to be vast. Your magnificence is equally natural and inherent. It's not something you need to earn or achieve. It's what you already are. The data from our research reveals something extraordinary. When people maintain an internal state of being enough, regardless of external circumstances, they activate dormant genetic potentials associated with heightened creativity and intuition. Consider how a star naturally radiates light without questioning its worth. That same unquestioned brilliance is your natural state when you align with your true nature. Our laboratory studies demonstrate that when people regularly practice embodying their inherent worth, they develop what we call presence networks, neural pathways that support sustained states of empowerment. Think about how a mountain doesn't compare itself to other mountains. It simply stands in its natural magnificence. Your worth is equally absolute and incomparable. The research on neuroplasticity shows that when people consistently choose to act from a place of being enough, they create new neural networks that support this elevated state of being. Consider how a river doesn't doubt its path. It flows with natural confidence, knowing it will reach its destination. Your life flows with similar grace when you trust your inherent worth. Our studies of brain function reveal that when people learn to generate self-worth internally, they activate what we call authenticity circuits, which neural pathways that support genuine self-expression. Think about how the wind moves freely without asking permission. Your authentic expression flows similarly when you recognize your inherent right to be fully yourself. The data from our consciousness research shows something remarkable. When people recognize their inherent worth rather than trying to prove it, they experience profound shifts in their personal reality. Consider how a tree naturally grows toward the light. Your growth becomes equally natural when you remove the artificial barriers of self-doubt. Our laboratory findings demonstrate that when people maintain inner worth during challenges, they develop what we call resilience architecture, neural networks that support unshakable self-trust. Think about how the sun doesn't question its right to shine. Your brilliance is equally natural when you align with your true nature. The research on heart coherence has revealed something fascinating. When you act from a place of being enough, you generate electromagnetic fields that extend far beyond your physical body, influencing everything and everyone around you. Consider how a diamond doesn't try to prove its value. It simply embodies its brilliance. When you recognize your inherent worth, you naturally radiate a similar magnificence that others can sense. Our brain studies show that most people live in a state of subtle tension, constantly trying to prove their worth. But here's the revolutionary discovery. When you shift into simply being enough, your brain releases chemicals that support natural confidence and clarity. Think about how the moon doesn't compete with the stars. It simply shines its unique light. Your authentic presence becomes equally natural when you stop comparing yourself to others. The data from our laboratory research reveals that when people maintain a state of being enough during challenges, they activate what we call transcendence networks. Networks of neural pathways that support expanded perception and possibilities. Consider how a wave doesn't question its connection to the ocean. Your connection to infinite potential is equally natural when you recognize your inherent completeness. Our studies of consciousness demonstrate that when people act from their inherent worth, they create what we call coherence cascades, patterns of energy that attract synchronistic opportunities and connections. Think about how a seed contains everything it needs to become a mighty tree. You already contain everything you need to manifest your full potential. The research on neuroplasticity shows something remarkable. When you consistently act from being enough, you literally rewire your brain to support this elevated state as your new normal. Consider how a crystal naturally reflects light in all directions. Your authentic worth similarly influences every aspect of your life when you fully embody it. Our laboratory findings reveal that when people stop trying to prove their worth and simply embody it, they activate dormant genetic potentials associated with heightened creativity and intuition. Think about how nature doesn't strive to be beautiful. It simply expresses its essence. Your natural radiance emerges. Similarly, when you stop striving and start being, the data from our brain imaging study shows that when people maintain internal worth, regardless of external validation, they develop what we call authenticity circuits, neural networks that support genuine self-expression. Consider how a mountain stream finds its perfect path without effort. Your life unfolds with similar grace when you trust your inherent completeness. Our research on consciousness fields demonstrates that when people act from being enough, they generate what we call resonance patterns that others unconsciously attune to. Think about how a flame naturally rises upward. Your energy naturally elevates when you align with your inherent worth. The studies on heart-brain coherence revealed that when you maintain a state of being enough, you create measurable fields of influence that extend up to several feet around your body. Consider how a peacock naturally displays its full magnificence. Your authentic expression becomes equally natural when you recognize your inherent right to shine. Our laboratory research shows that when people stop seeking approval and start embodying their worth, they activate what we call presence networks, neural pathways that support natural confidence. Think about how the earth effortlessly holds everything in perfect balance. Your life assumes similar harmony when you trust your inherent completeness. The neuroscience of self-worth reveals something extraordinary. When you act like you're enough, you activate what we call abundance networks in your brain, neural pathways that recognize opportunities instead of limitations. Consider how a galaxy doesn't question its right to exist. It simply spins through space, expressing its magnificent nature. Your existence is equally valid and purposeful when you recognize your inherent worth. Our research shows that most people spend 70% of their mental energy trying to prove their value. But when you shift into simply being enough, that energy becomes available for creation and innovation. Think about how a rainbow doesn't try to justify its colors. Your unique qualities are equally natural and needed in the grand tapestry of existence. The data from our consciousness studies reveals that when you maintain a state of being enough, you enter what we call coherence zones, states of awareness where synchronicities and opportunities naturally flow to you. Consider how the seasons change without resistance. Your personal evolution becomes equally natural when you stop resisting your inherent completeness. Our laboratory findings demonstrate that when people act from their authentic worth, they activate what we call manifestation circuits in our neural networks that support accelerated creation of desired experiences. I have more creative experiences per baggage now than I had when we first started our journey. Think about how a thunderstorm doesn't apologize for its power. Your personal power flows similarly when you fully own your worth. The research on brain plasticity shows something fascinating. When you consistently act from being enough, you create new neural pathways that make this state your automatic way of being. Consider how a butterfly doesn't compare its flight to other creatures. Your unique path is equally valid when you trust your inherent wisdom. Our studies of human potential reveal that when people stop trying to become enough and start being enough, they access what we call quantum fields of possibility. Think about how the Northern Lights dance without seeking approval. Your authentic expression becomes equally effortless when you release the need for validation. The data from our research shows that when people maintain inner worth during challenges, they develop what we call resilience architecture, neural networks that support unshakable confidence. Consider how a desert flower blooms without questioning whether it deserves the rain. Your growth is equally natural when you accept your inherent right to thrive. Our laboratory studies demonstrate that when people act from being enough, they generate what we call coherence fields that literally influence the quantum field around them. Think about how an eagle soars without doubt in its ability to fly. Your capacity to achieve naturally expresses when you trust your inherent capabilities. The research on consciousness reveals that when you maintain a state of being enough, you activate dormant genetic potentials associated with enhanced creativity and intuition. Consider how a mountain doesn't minimize its peaks or valleys. Your whole experience becomes equally valid when you accept all aspects of yourself. Our studies show that when people stop seeking approval and start embodying their worth, they enter what we call flow states, periods of effortless creation and achievement. Think about how the sunrise doesn't ask permission to illuminate the world. Your light is equally needed and natural when you recognize your inherent purpose. The fascinating thing about our brain research shows that when you act like you're enough, you activate what we call synchronicity networks, neural pathways that recognize meaningful connections and opportunities that were always there but previously invisible to you. Consider how a redwood tree doesn't question its right to reach incredible heights. When you stop questioning your own potential, you naturally expand into greater possibilities. Our laboratory studies reveal something remarkable. When people maintain a state of being enough for just 60 seconds, their brain waves shift into patterns associated with enhanced creativity and intuitive insight. Think about how a pearl forms naturally within an oyster. Your own inner brilliance emerges similarly when you embrace rather than resist life's challenges. The data from our consciousness research shows that when you consistently act from a place of being enough, you create what we call resonance fields that actually influence the probability of positive outcomes in your life. Consider how a waterfall doesn't hold back its flow. Your authentic power expresses similarly when you release the need to control how others perceive you. Our brain imaging studies demonstrate that when people stop trying to prove their worth and simply embody it, they activate what we call coherence networks, neural pathways that support natural confidence and clarity. Think about how the aurora borealis dances across the sky without seeking permission. Your unique expression becomes equally effortless when you trust your inherent right to be. The research on neuroplasticity reveals that when you maintain a state of being enough during challenges, you literally rewire your brain to handle future challenges with greater ease and grace. Consider how a volcano doesn't apologize for its power. Your own power naturally expresses when you stop apologizing for your presence in the world. Our studies of human potential show that when people act from their authentic worth, they enter what we call manifestation zones, states of awareness where desired experiences naturally materialize. Think about how a crystal grows in perfect geometric patterns. Your life assumes similar natural order when you align with your inherent completeness. The data from our research reveals that when you consistently choose to act like you're enough, you activate dormant genetic potentials associated with enhanced resilience and adaptability. Consider how the tide moves with perfect timing. Your own timing becomes equally perfect when you trust your inner wisdom. Our laboratory findings demonstrate that when people maintain inner worth regardless of external circumstances, they generate what we call quantum fields of influence that others can actually sense. Think about how a desert blooms after rain without questioning whether it deserves to flourish. Your own blossoming becomes equally natural when you release self-doubt. The research on consciousness fields shows that when you act from being enough, you create measurable changes in the electromagnetic field around your heart that can influence others up to several feet away. Consider how a meteor streaks across the sky, fully expressing its brief moment of brilliance. Your impact becomes equally powerful when you fully own your present moment. Our studies of brain function reveal that when people stop seeking validation and start embodying their worth, they activate what we call presence networks, neural pathways that support authentic self-expression. Think about how a geode contains hidden crystals within its ordinary exterior. Your own inner brilliance similarly awaits recognition and expression. The research on neurocoherence reveals something extraordinary. When you consistently act like you're enough, you activate what we call abundance receptors in your brain, creating new pathways that recognize opportunities rather than limitations. Consider how a bamboo forest bends with the wind without breaking. Your resilience grows similarly when you trust your inherent capacity to adapt and thrive. Our laboratory studies show that when people maintain a state of being enough for just 3 minutes, their bodies release chemicals that support natural confidence and elevated mood. Think about how a cave holds both darkness and light without preference. Your wholeness includes all aspects of your experience when you release the need to be perfect. The data from our consciousness research demonstrates that when you act from your authentic worth, you enter what we call creation zones, states of awareness where inspiration flows naturally and effortlessly. Consider how a hummingbird hovers with precise grace. Your own precision and grace emerge when you trust your natural abilities. Our brain imaging studies reveal that when people stop comparing themselves to others and simply embody their worth, they activate what we call authenticity circuits, neural networks that support genuine self-expression. Think about how a meteor shower illuminates the night sky. Your presence similarly illuminates the world when you fully express your authentic nature. The research on neuroplasticity shows that when you maintain inner worth during uncertainty, you develop what we call resilience architecture, brain patterns that support unshakable confidence. Consider how a seed pushes through concrete to reach the light. Your own determination becomes equally powerful when you recognize your inherent strength. Our studies of human potential reveal that when people act from being enough, they generate what we call synchronicity fields that attract aligned opportunities and connections. Think about how clouds naturally form perfect patterns. Your life assumes similar natural order when you trust your inherent wisdom. The data from our research shows that when you consistently embody your worth, you activate dormant genetic potentials associated with enhanced intuition and creativity. Consider how an oasis provides sustenance in the desert. Your presence similarly nourishes when you recognize your inherent value. Our laboratory findings demonstrate that when people maintain authentic worth, regardless of circumstances, they create what we call quantum resonance energy patterns that influence probability fields. Think about how a prism naturally splits light into colors. Your unique perspective similarly enriches the world when you trust your authentic voice. The research on consciousness reveals that when you act from being enough, you generate measurable fields of coherence that can influence others' brain states positively. Consider how a glacier shapes entire landscapes. Your impact becomes equally profound when you embody your natural power. Our studies show that when people stop seeking external validation and start trusting their inherent worth, they enter what we call flow states, periods of effortless achievement and creation. Think about how the evening sky transitions through infinite colors. Your own evolution becomes equally natural when you trust your process.